choo. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Fraud on the Telly. Today, we are once again covering a familiar topic, railroading. That's right, after part 2 of the Mighty Nine Reunited Critical Roles mini-series, the Return to Campaign 2 finished, a bunch of fans were pretty upset by a case of railroading from one Matthew Mercer. Today we're going to be answering the question, should you railroad in your D&D game? And talking about this concept of railroading once again on this channel, and why I think that it gets some unnecessary hate. As always, guys, if you enjoyed the video, learned something new, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to check out some of our other Critical Role content. Let's get right into the video, shall we? So, railroading, what exactly is it? No, it's not when you go on a railroading. It's a concept in D&D, I guess really any tabletop role-playing game element, really I guess any role-playing game in general. It's this idea of when your dungeon master, your game masters takes the game basically and puts you on the rails. This can come in many forms. Usually it's directing the story in some kind of way that the dungeon master wants it to go. Generally, it's thought of in kind of a negative connotation because most of the time when people think of railroading, they think of some really blatant bad examples and basically this idea that a railroading DM takes away from player agency, from player choice. Player choices feel like they don't matter if your DM, I guess, is just railroading you all the time. That is the thought, at least. Now, we've talked about this several times on the channel, but railroading is just one of those things that D&D players, for the most part, people that haven't really DM'd a lot, just don't seem to understand. Put that in the context of a D&D stream or show, especially one as big as Critical Role, and it makes for some upset people. Now, without revealing spoilers, basically in the second part of the Return of the Mighty Nine, Matt was forced to do a bit of ham-fisting, railroading, we'll say, to get the story in a place where he wanted to go, and I'm not gonna lie, it didn't feel super great as an audience member. Even I at first was kind of taken aback. You'd know if you watched our review of the Mighty Nine Reunited. I was pretty critical of some of the elements of this D&D miniseries, but I don't think that the railroading was a problem. It wasn't a problem at all, actually. All DMs railroad. I would even go to say that all good DMs railroad. Your favorite DM, whether it's Matt Mercer or Brennan Mulligan, for me, railroad all the time. If anything, Brennan is the king of railroading, as he railroads so well, you don't even know he's doing it. If you watched our Is EXU Calamity scripted video, you know that the reason that Exandria Unlimited Calamity was so good and felt like it was scripted at times was Brennan's masterful work of keeping the story on track. You see, it really just all depends on the context. What kind of game are you playing with your players, or what kind of game are you watching? And these Critical Role examples like EXU Calamity or the Mighty Nine Reunited, these are one-shots. They are short stories, short mini specials. They're only supposed to be a couple of sessions long. Because of that, they're trying to hit very specific story beats as they go through the story. It's kind of a necessity for the story of the one shot to play out. For the Mighty Nine Reunited, the story beat of Ukatoa, the Great Leviathan, being released was one that basically had to be hit, as the story and the purpose of the one shot was this plot point right here. If it never happened or they prevented it, while it would be cool, it would basically, I don't know, cut the show or the story in half. It's much more fulfilling getting to actually defeat the baddie as opposed to, I guess, preventing it from coming out. In this context, the only thing I guess you could critique about railroading was it would feel really bad if Matt railroads a story to potentially have this big combat with the big baddie of the arc, and that big baddie were to permanently kill one of the players. Even in longer form games, DMs often use railroading tactics to get the party where they want to go. If you've DM'd before, then you know there's never enough preparation you can do for a group of players. They will always do something crazy that you can't predict and you can't plan for. Things are just gonna go off the rails, and if that's how your game is, then fine, play it off the rails. There's been so many times where I've been in games that are based around a module, and then maybe like 5 to 10 sessions in, we're completely off the module now because we've just spun off on our own thing, and that's perfectly fine. However, if you're trying to tell a very specific type of story that you've laid out ahead of time, or you have some kind of big arc or narrative you're working towards, having rails to guide your players, there's nothing wrong with that. Most of the time when DMs railroad and do railroady-esque things, players don't even realize it. They don't even know what's going on, as we have the power of the DM screen and all of the things that are working behind. It's really only in instances like what happened, like we said on the last episode of Critical Role, that it really becomes a problem. The more obvious the railroad, generally the more problem that people will have with it, because it kind of can take you out of the moment. It's not immersive. It feels bad if a bunch of characters make a bunch of decisions or actions to stop a certain event from happening, but the DM really wants that event to happen, and so he makes it happen anyway. But at the end of the day, it really just depends on the context of the D&D game. In one-shots and short story-esque sessions for role-playing games, railroading is to be expected. You can't really tell the point of the story without it. If I'm playing Curse of Strahd with a bunch of players, I'm going to have to railroad them in some kind of capacity, because we're trying to tell the story that is Curse of Strahd. Now, we can go off the rails at times to tell other stories and deal with other issues, but in a game like that, in a module like that, you have to deal with the main problems that the story gives you, and so eventually you're going to have to get back on track. Like we said, I can understand the outrage. It definitely, for me, when I first saw that, it definitely was like, ooh, that feels really bad, doesn't it? Because you could tell that Matt thought that that was probably a possibility, but he didn't expect for it to happen. And that's going to happen in D&D or any role-playing game. That you can't predict everything your players are going to do, and the dice are random, so random things can happen. The only thing you can really do is try to work behind the scenes, try to bend the rules or craft the narrative to fit what you're trying to tell. But sometimes you got to be a little more ham-fisted about it, I guess. I just wanted to make this video because we've talked about railroading multiple times on this channel, and I think a really good example of railroading done well was EXU Calamity. So go check out that video, click the eye above if you want to hear me rant more about the concept of railroading and just why a lot of players and viewers of D&D streams just don't seem to get it. I totally understand. It leaves a kind of weird visceral feeling a lot of times when it happens, and it's really obvious because it just feels bad and it feels like it's taking away agency of the players. But at the end of the day, it really just comes down to everyone's game and your relationship with your DM and the stories you're trying to tell. Railroading can be bad and can be overboard. I'm sure everyone can think of the DM example of this, that horror DM that is the super hard railroader, and it doesn't feel like your player has agency. No, there's a fine line to be found here somewhere in the middle where railroading is completely acceptable, and if done right, your players don't even know that it's happening, and if you're doing it for a greater story narrative reason to make sure that, you know, there can be payoff to a big story that you're trying to tell, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's basically almost expected of you as a DM. Brennan and Matt talk about this a lot. I'm sure you can look at videos with them talking about it, and they have some really good insight because, like we said, Brennan Mulligan is the king of railroading because all this guy does is tell like short story arcs, you know, like 10, 15 episode short story arcs. So you kind of have to railroad in instances like this. He's just so good at it. A lot of times you don't even notice. Always, guys, if you enjoyed the video, learned something new, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I got a new mic if you guys couldn't tell, so I hope the audio quality is a bit better. I'm still getting it fine-tuned, so hopefully it's not bad. Don't forget to check out some of our other content. And as always, guys, I hope to see you in the next video. Stay safe out there. Peace, love, Adu.